Speaker Pelosi is making it clear the committee to investigate 1-6 will move forward even without Kevin McCarthy's Republican additions. Of course, it was the GOP, don't forget, that rejected the formation of a bipartisan commission on January 6th in the first place that would have had an even number of representatives from each party. Here with us again tonight, James Carville, veteran Democratic strategist, rose to national fame with the Clinton campaign, co-host of the Politics War Room podcast, and Tim Miller, a contributor to The Bulwark, former communications director for Jeb Bush. Gentlemen, it's always a pleasure. Thank you both for coming on. James, I'd like to begin with you and your now famous advice to members of your party to own that insurrection every day, hold it up to the Republicans every day. The question is, how do you reckon they have done so far this week? I noted some genuine surprise that McCarthy was going to, in effect, pull a Benghazi on this, throw up a bunch of distractions, and including but not limited to, Pelosi didn't have enough security on hand that day.
Well, remember, McCarthy is a pathetic glob of protoplasm. He was panicked out of his mind on January the 6th, calling the president, begging for help and everything else. Then he refuses to have the bipartisan committee, and now he's doing this. The guy has no sense of shame. And it's really unbelievable when you look at the actual facts of what happened. And let me tell you something. I know Speaker Pelosi. A lot of people know it better than me, and everybody's judgment is the same. She's tough as nails, and she's not going to let this go. And she correctly wants to find out and get to the bottom of one of the greatest criminal acts in the history of the United States. And I think people around the country support this and are just perplexed at how pathetic a human being McCarthy is.
Tim, a version of the same question, but I'd put this spin on it. Do you think the Democrats realize that they have tools at their disposal to make this, give this even more gravity, make this even more of an investigation than it looks like on the surface? For example, they could put these hearings on in prime time, and I imagine they would get a pretty substantial audience. Do you think they're doing enough, to James' orders, with the opportunity they have here for investigation?
Well, how about I come back with a scorecard in a couple weeks, Brian? I think that right now, Pelosi's first move, I give an A+ to. I think that there certainly, I'm sure, were people in her ear saying that, this needs to have the patina of bipartisanship and let Jim Jordan is shirtless, jacketless, nonsense continue on the committee. Let Jim Banks and then Tucker Carlson's kid who works for him be on the committee. And she took a hard line and said, no, we're not going to turn this into a circus. We're going to take this seriously. It's already a bipartisan commission. Liz Cheney's on it. It sounds like she might add some others, maybe our friend Denver Riggleman, a former rep, who's a Republican. And she played hardball on that. And so I think that was the right first move. I think it sounds like, obviously, some of the officers who served that day will be testifying. I think that is going to be extremely compelling testimony. I think the next challenge will be how much she's able to, and that the committee and Benny Thompson and others are able to put the screws to Mark Meadows and others and force them to testify. Kevin McCarthy might have to testify. Anyone with firsthand knowledge of the president's activities that day. So, I think that challenge is over the horizon. But her first move was really strong and encouraging.
James Carville, as you know, as you've watched, the whataboutism includes the Republicans wanting to investigate the murder of a Capitol Hill police officer on Good Friday in an entirely unrelated case. They want to, as I said, investigate why Pelosi didn't have more security. But at the height of it, remember, McCarthy didn't call Pelosi to say, call off the dogs. He called the president to say, call off the dogs.
Look, the way this is shaping up, Speaker Pelosi is just a lot smarter and a lot tougher than Kevin McCarthy. Right now, I agree with Tim. I'm very encouraged. I'm not surprised because McCarthy is not a particularly bright man and a particularly weak person. And I think that Pelosi is a very bright and a very strong person. So I think we're going to want to find out how much cooperation that these criminals on January the 6th had from members of Congress that were telling themselves. I know there's great interest in that, and I think that Speaker Pelosi is going to want that committee to look into that and find out if there's culpability, because somebody was driving this getaway car.
To our viewers, if you had either protoplasm or the image of a shirtless Jim Jordan on your bingo card, take a bow. You've been successful. To everybody else, these two gentlemen have agreed to stay with us over this next break.